Hello and welcome to the Oxford Clay Pottery podcast. I'm Catherine Tomlinson and I founded Oxford Clay, an eco-conscious pottery company. So on this podcast, we're going to be talking about all things pottery related, often with an eco-conscious twist, and I can't wait to share it with you. Let's go. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about water use in the pottery studio and why it's important to conserve water, and also 2 top tips in terms of managing your water use in the pottery studio. So let's go. So why is managing water important in the pottery studio? Well, the Energy Saving Trust in the UK has said that water supply is more unpredictable than ever before. Droughts have increased across Europe, and 12 out of the 23 water companies operating in the UK are under what's known as serious stress. So they're having issues meeting the demand for water in their area. So water's a very precious resource, and it also takes energy to treat and also pump water into homes. So anything we can do in the pottery studio will be, really positive in that respect. And, as potters, we're using water for everything. So we're using it to, say, like make up glazes and slips. We're using it for throwing. We're, using it to wash all our tools, our hands, wash down tables afterwards. So, we're potentially using a lot of water. So anything we can do is fantastically positive, from an environmental perspective. So let's go through 2 top tips that I use on a daily basis to manage my water use in the pottery studio. So the first tip is that I actually have water butts where I collect rainwater from the roof. So this is water which would just, ordinarily run off into the ground, but I'm actually channeling it from the drain pipe into a series of 3 different water butts, which are about 200 litres each. So, they can store a lot of water, and I use this water for cleaning everything. I use it to make up my slip, and I use it to make up glazes. So that water is actually, fantastic. And slip making is actually, so Andrew Martin, who wrote, a fantastic book on slip making, actually talks about how, pond water and rainwater is actually the best kind of water that you can use for slip making. So that's fantastic. So it's great for use in slip making and, cleaning the pottery studio in general. So that's what I do. I siphon it off the roof and I store it in water butts, and I use it all the time in the pottery studio. So my second top tip is actually to do with recycling water in the pottery studio. So I call this technique the bucket technique. I'm not sure if that's actually, what it's called, but what I do is I fill a bucket with water, and then I use this water throughout the day to kind of like wash all my hands in, wash all my tools, wash my hands. I use it for throwing. And at the end of the day, I tip all the water back into the bucket. And then overnight, the water and the clay particles separate. So at the bottom, you've got, your clay particles, your kind of clay sludge. And then at the top, you've got this like fantastic fresh water, which is effectively, just as fresh as the day before you started using it. So what I then do is the next day, I just gently pour off the top layer of water, and then I can use that in a completely new bucket and use that throughout the day all over again. And it's effectively recycling, almost 100% of the water. I put the kind of bottom clay sludge in my reclaiming bin, and then that can just dry out and then get reclaimed, with the general clay when I'm doing clay reclaiming. So this is really good technique if you don't have access to like running water, in the place that you're making pottery. So say like you're making it in like, an outbuilding or like a shed or, a kitchen table or something, living room table. You don't need access to like running water to be able to make pottery. You can just use this bucket technique. That's what I use. I don't have running water, in my pottery studio. I basically just use the bucket all day and then let it separate, and that's how I use water in the studio basically. So this is also a really good technique if you don't have a sink, or if you do have a sink but you don't have what's called a trap, a sink trap, which actually is a system of trapping clay as it flows down the sink to prevent it from going down the drain. This is a fantastic technique to use instead of a sink trap. So, some potters actually make their own sink traps, and effectively what it's doing is it's draining the water into a kind of, a bit like a bucket, like a vessel, which is letting the clay sink to the bottom, and then it's siphoning off, your wastewater on the top. So, I mean, if you don't have a sink trap, you don't want to make a sink trap, you don't have a sink in your pottery studio, the bucket technique is a fantastic technique to use, to save you all that trouble of building a sink trap, putting in a sink trap. You actually don't need to do this, So it's a very simple piece of equipment. I just got my bucket from a DIY shop, and which is, it was a bucket that was specifically made for like mixing plaster in. So it's extremely strong. And I would really recommend that because they last a really long time, those buckets. So DIY shops are like fantastic places to get really, really strong equipment, that are actually made for kind of clay and plaster work. So that's my top tip. And I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I've enjoyed talking to you about water, and I'll see you next time. So if you liked that and you're interested in learning more about pottery, eco-conscious pottery, tools and techniques for potters, there's so much for you on the Oxford Clay website. There's blogs, ebooks, e-courses, video courses, and I can't wait to see you there. So the website is www.oxfordclay.co.uk.